So this is our predictions for the next 10 years as it relates to climate. Now, what we think about the next 10 years actually reflects what happened in the last 10 years. You see, in the last 10 years, the conversation completely shifted from one of whether this is a conversation that we all agree upon to one of really being mainstreamed. You see, the frequency of 100-year storms like Sandy, Maria, Harvey, you see certain events like the fires, even in the last year in the Amazon, in California, and now sadly in Australia. You see this conversation about the severity of the climate crisis is now mainstream, and countries and companies are agreeing that it's something that needs to be addressed. So what we think the next 10 years is going to be about is solutions. People saying, all right, this is something that we all agree upon. What are we actually going to do to solve it? So we break it down into 3 core groups that are going to play pivotal roles in essentially solving the climate crisis, or at least trying to, and that's individuals, corporations, and governments. Now, to start off, we'll look at governments. You see, governments are going to play a pivotal role because of the policy decisions they can implement to actually incentivize us to shift towards better climate solutions. Now, most notably, we think that governments can play a very important role in essentially putting a price on what is actually creating and exacerbating this issue, and that is carbon. You see, how do we put a price on carbon? You have to tax it, and that's a prediction that we have for the next 10 years, is that governments starting regionally, potentially in specific countries or on a state level, are actually going to start pricing or taxing carbon so that companies and individuals recognize the cost of what they are creating. Now, secondly, you look at corporations. See, we think that corporations are actually going to have to make a decision very soon as to how they're going to act as it pertains to climate. You see, companies are going to quickly realize that climate change and the climate crisis can either be a risk or an opportunity for them. You see, the companies that act fastest and act soonest, we think right now, are going to actually be the best position to make this an opportunity. But those companies that wait are going to actually have the climate crisis be a massive risk for them, because it's going to pose a massive risk to their logistics, to their supply chains, to their consumers, to their reputations, and to their brands. You see, we think, and our prediction is that you're going to see companies investing heavily and directing investments from other areas that would have received the primary amount of their investment towards climate initiatives, either mitigating the risk of climate change on their business or actually preparing themselves for the new climate reality. Now, the final factor is the individual. Now, we believe that individuals are going to need to change the way that they eat, change the way that they shop, change the way that they invest. So our predictions around those are actually very specific. You see, around the ways that people eat, we think that a predominantly plant-rich diet, not necessarily plant-based, is going to become mainstream in the next 10 years. So you look at the prevalence of meat alternatives and you see how they are becoming cheaper, they are becoming healthier, and most importantly, they're becoming tastier. So we think in the next 10 years, for a lot of different reasons, we are all going to be eating a lot more of our protein from plant-based sources. Now, we're not saying everyone's going to go vegan, but we think that people will shift towards that over time. Now, we also think that as people consume, as people shop, people are going to look at the way they consume and this new model of hyperconsumption, and they're going to understand the costs of that on both the environment and on the people that are actually in the supply chains and the people that produce. So our prediction for the next 10 years of consumption is actually the addressing of fast fashion. The idea that you buy something, wear it a few times and throw it away just to be, up in vogue with the most popular outfit is going to be heavily scrutinized, and people are going to change the way they consume. And finally, the way that people invest. Right? We think that people are going to very quickly realize that the way that you allocate capital towards companies that respect their resources and away from companies that don't respect their resources is a very effective tool that we have to actually address the climate crisis. Now, finally, we think that in order for there to actually be a solution to climate change in the next 10 years, we need to have more hope. There cannot be a feeling of despair. Whenever people ask us about it, there is this huge feeling of hopelessness that none of us can actually have an impact. That is not the truth. We don't solve things with a feeling of despair. We solve them by coming together and acting collectively to push companies, pushing governments to actually address it with us. So we hope that's helpful. Hopefully that gives the people a lot more hope. And let us know if you've got any thoughts.